You're listening to the Law Frog Radio Show with David McDivitt and Ross Ford on Kilo 94.3 FM. Presented by McDivitt Law Firm.
I brought in my other dog, my smaller dog, Morty, so he wouldn't molest you like my bigger dog, Deke. And then you're on the phone, so it didn't matter, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's too bad. I love small dogs. But, if it makes up for it, I've got new neighbors next door to me, and they have two large dogs that bark right outside my window all the time. So,
hey, nice. How's that working
so
out
I got
for
that
you?
going for me. Yeah, no, especially when the kids are trying to go to sleep. It's awesome.
You're a lawyer. Couldn't you sue their ass?
You know what? That's a last resort.
Yeah, because we've talked about this. You need to be nice to your neighbors. You start getting litigious with your neighbors and things get worse and worse, huh?
By the way, they're amazing people. They're wonderful. And the dogs are super sweet. It's just that they don't know, they can't see through the fence. So every time they're let outside, they just want to bark.
Right. Yes, it's good and bad. I got a neighbor who has a German Shepherd, and when he's not there, the dog's on guard and barks really loudly at everything, but sometimes it's bears. So, and people trying to break into cars and stuff too. So,
yeah, I mean,
what do you do? Let's see here. We got a question from a citizen. Hopefully you're out there. Citizen Scott, check in. I want to, just to help other people out. I think he talked to his insurance company and kind of got things figured out, but he got a wild letter threatening to be sued for an accident a couple of years ago that he didn't even think it was still a thing. And they were like, so we're going to take $1.4 million from you or something like that. Something obscene. Just obviously one of those scare tactics. So, Scotty, if you're out there, give us a call. I want to start with this one, though. You didn't hear about the largest casino heist in Colorado history yet, huh, David?
I'm pleading the fifth.
Hey, no, it wasn't you this time. Have you always dreamed of robbing a casino like George Clooney or something?
No, I wouldn't say I've ever dreamed of it. Yeah. I guess maybe I've thought about how it would work if I were going to try to do something, but I never get past the cameras
anymore, right? Yeah. You see some of those older movies and stuff like Ocean's 11 originally was Frank Sinatra and a bunch of the Rat Packers. And it's like, you couldn't get away with that these days. Hell, even Ocean's 11, you're like, nope, that wouldn't work today. No, sorry.
No. And one thing I know about myself is when it comes to that kind of behavior, doing things that are, criminal, I think I'm an idiot. Yeah. I don't think I could get away with anything. So
right, I can't even lie to my wife. I felt like about eating something I wasn't supposed to eat or drinking an extra beer. Did you do that? No.
Well, no.
Okay, well, let's see. It runs down like this. So this is the biggest one since gambling was illegal in the state of Colorado. So you go back to 1990. Up until this one, $100,000 was the most anyone stole from a casino, and we found that guy. It was mostly in 20s and stuff. And he went around, he bought a brand new car with 20s. And 20s. Then bought a Harley with 20s. And it's obviously pretty obscene. What they did is his income was $6,400 over this several months. And he spent like $38,000 or something like that. It's like, where'd that come from there, pal? So his thing crumbled. This one is out of Blackhawk, the Monarch Casino. It was on the night of the time change. A lady who worked inside the cage with the money basically just took bricks of $50,000 at a time, a bunch of them, loaded up in a silver minivan. She had about $500,000. Eventually, she would drive to a hospital in the Denver area and turn all this money over to a person at an emergency room. And she claims that she got a call from someone who claimed to be her boss, the cage manager, and told her, we have this thing we need to pay for right now. It's really an emergency. We could lose our license. Take $500,000 and give it to this guy. And she did. So what do you think? I mean, all right, first of all, I understand it's hard to find good help these days, but ignorance is no way to get out of the law, right?
Well, that's one of the first things that they teach in law school, that ignorance of the law is no defense. I mean, if you commit a crime, you commit a crime. Now, there could be some mitigating factors. That means things that might reduce your punishment or might make a prosecutor decide to charge a person with a lesser crime if there are circumstances, we call them mitigating circumstances, that kind of make it look like this person didn't have the intent to do something, but the mere commission of a crime is and of itself, criminal.
Right.
So if you shoot somebody, but then you say, well, I didn't know it was illegal. And they say, yeah, but did you intend to do that act? Did you intend to shoot the person? So then, yes. Now, if this person truly was operating under the impression that what they were doing was legitimate,
right?
Which is
and I know that's
take
hard
money,
to believe. So
cash.
It's like, there's no way someone could be that stupid. But honestly, in this day and age, there are people that are that stupid, I'm afraid.
Well, and I'm curious to know how they're prosecuting this and how they're investigating it, too. I mean, is there evidence that there was somebody who was manipulating her?
Well, she claims it was a phone call and a text, so I would assume she has something there. They have video of her obviously taking the money and loading it up and pictures of her at the emergency room handing it over to some random guy. But the investigation, they're kind of tight-lipped because it's so underway, so that you don't know if they've got the money back or if this guy disappeared. Let's say this guy has done the perfect crime. He's got $500,000 and he's just like a fart in the wind. He's gone. Yep. What happens to her? Is she on the line for $500,000? I'm sure the casino's insured. But where do we go? Like, where do you see that? If in fact, someone duped her, he's gone, she's left holding the bag, what is the end result, do you think?
A couple different things, Ross. And this is where we get into the legal weeds. Number one, we have criminal and then you have civil issues here. So we deal with it criminally. The prosecutors, the investigators, they'll be analyzing, just how culpable she is for this. I mean, she clearly acted, but was she acting in concert with as a known conspiracy?
Right.
And so
you just give the money and then you play dumb, and I'll meet you in Mexico.
Let me tell you something. If you work at a company and your boss tells you, all right, I need you to take this $50,000 and take it to a guy named Robert over there at the bakery because he's helping with a construction project. And you do that, but really what your boss is doing is robbing from the company.
And he's using a mule.
Yeah, the boss is in trouble. I'm sure Robert is in trouble. But I mean, the person who's doing this, if they truly don't realize what they're doing is criminal, and while it is criminal, that may be a situation where we talked about mitigating factors, that this person could be reasonably inferred that they believe they were operating lawfully within the scope of their employment. Now, they're still part of this conspiracy, and so the question is just how culpable are they?
Right.
But then you also, so in this situation, I mean, this does kind of stretch the reasonable line here, where it doesn't seem reasonable to assume, especially at a casino, where to lose their license. I mean, these are regulatory things, So this idea that you would take some money to somebody at a hospital seems far-fetched.
So let's go a little bit deeper then. Let's say they give her an IQ test and she gets a 4. So she's obviously someone whose mental capacity is very minimal.
Right. Well, then you're looking at, you see this all the time in movies and in the news. They're not guilty by reason of reduced mental capacity or something. And so what happens in a situation, and so that gets us to something else. Somebody just doesn't have the mental capacity to understand that what they've done is criminal. Then you were looking at a situation where instead of somebody being punished through the traditional punitive system of going to jail or to prison, they are instead referred to a facility where they can continue to get the mental help that they need, and to a point where we have to determine in many situations, are they then have they regained some kind of capacity that allows them to participate in their defense, understand the nature of what they've been charged with, the nature of their crime. You usually see this in very severe criminal matters where somebody was killed, for example. In a theft like this, I just don't know, not having been a prosecutor, how they would look at this. But the other thing I bring up too is a civil claim here that the casino might have, or in turn the insurance company, because once the insurance company makes the casino whole, they will then analyze whether or not they have a strong case to pursue for reimbursement of the money that they had to pay out. Right. And that could come from a criminal case where a court orders restitution, which is an order from the court that directs the defendant to reimburse the victim the money that was somehow lost because of that crime. And then you have to look at how likely you are to get reimbursed that money. So if you've got a person here who's
smart enough or not smart enough to realize that's some kind of a scam, probably doesn't have a whole nest egg set up, No,
unlikely. But it's one way to try to claw back the money, the stolen money.
At the very least, this is going to be a fascinating story, right?
Well, it is, and that's the thing. I mean, I am very curious about what the investigation is going to
I wish
unfold,
there was more.
how it's going to unfold, and what we're going to learn.
There's so many. I was just obsessed with this morning because I was fascinated just by the robbery aspect alone. I just love those old heists and stuff like that, especially modern day. And then when I heard her excuses, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a great ride.
This is
a good story. Okay, cool. Go ahead.
Jason Statham was in this movie. I think it's called The Bank Job. I don't know. It came out a dozen years ago.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And that's another. Yeah, it's another. I think a really good heist movie where I thought, that's a clever movie. But
right,
anyway.
There's someone Killing Zoe is a great one. It's an art theft movie. There's so many great heist movies.
Well, that's why Thomas Crown Affair, the original, which was a money heist, and then the remake with Pierce Brosnan, an art heist. Just both of them are two of my favorite movies.
Pretty cool stuff. So we're going to follow that one into the future. That's for sure. That's only a few weeks old, so we have a lot of time to deal with that one. In the meantime, let's get things back to business. We'll jump back in and get a couple phone calls. We'll see if we got our man Scott on the phone, who got just a crazy letter trying to scare money out of him after an accident.
I want to talk to Scott. This is, no pun intended, right up my lane.
There you go. It's his thing.
You're listening to the Law Frog Radio Show with David McDivitt and Ross Ford on Kilo 94.3 FM. Presented by McDivitt Law Firm.
I'm going to do the short version. Tell me if I miss anything, okay, Scott?
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so a couple years ago, you were in an accident. Your brakes failed. You hit a lady. That car hit another car.
No. It was opposite of that. The primary car got bumped into her, so her car took minimal damage in the thing.
Okay. So she was the second car that got hit.
Yes, and the first party was already settled. He's already completely taken care of.
Right. So you thought this thing was done, and then you got a letter from allegedly her lawyer like last week, and it was kind of hard, right?
Yeah, it was poorly written and very long.
And what do they want from you? What was the basic rundown that they're trying to shake you down?
Okay. Either the insurance company pays us $100,000, or else we're suing Scott Acorn for $500,000.
Huh. And obviously, that's not the way it works, right, Dave?
It depends. Let me be honest here. There are instances, and so I want to be careful. I understand this too, Scott.
All right.
You said your brakes failed and that you were somehow in a collision, but you mentioned that there was another car that hit this woman. Where were you in all of this? Where was your car?
Okay, my car was the primary car. The brakes failed. I ran into the back. So I went to put my foot on the brakes. I didn't stop.
Okay.
So I hit a car which bumped into the lady whose attorney sent me the letter.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So yeah, in a situation like that, that's not uncommon, where you have a chain reaction and somebody rear ends somebody and then it pushes that person into a car in front of them. So a couple of things here. Number one, it sounds like this happened a couple of years ago. It was
in December of 21.
Okay. All right. So just over a year ago. And so that, you're within what they call the statute of limitations for a case like this. Auto cases in Colorado, if somebody's hurt in a car crash, usually have three, there are exceptions as there are with everything, but a person who's been hurt usually has 3 years to file a lawsuit against people that they believe are responsible for causing their injuries. Now, what you received, I suspect, having not actually read the letter, is actually fairly common. And here's why. What it is, it seems to me, is a letter that the law firm sent out to let you know that you might have personal exposure so that you may want to get your own lawyer, because the insurance company up to this point seems to not be negotiating with this woman and her lawyer, your insurance company, for one reason or another, and it could be because they believe that they have evidence showing that it was a brake failure, a true mechanical issue, it was outside of your control, you didn't know that your brakes were going to fail, you did everything reasonable to continue to maintain your car, and this was just some fluke failure on the part of the design or manufacturing that went into your vehicle. And so they're telling this woman, Scott's not responsible for your injuries. I suspect what has happened leading up to this is that her lawyer has made a demand on the insurance company for what I also suspect are your policy limits of $100,000. And up to this point, the insurance company has said, no, we are not going to pay it. Whether they've said we would pay a certain amount or nothing at all, I don't know.
Let me fill in some facts here.
Okay.
Yeah, because Scott was terrified when this thing happened earlier this week, and then you talked with your insurance company, and they kind of...
Terrified isn't the word I would use. It went straight to mad.
Mad as hell.
Because there were so many holes in what was contained in the letter. One, it said I wasn't paying attention, which I was written on the scene for defective equipment. There's one thing. And after speaking with the adjuster, they did provide treatment. She went to the emergency room and got x-rays. They found an existing condition. She went through treatment until July and was released by a chiropractor and physical therapy. And the new things that she's trying to bring forth are from January of this year. So the adjuster's looking at it. We would have paid what was put before us, but she went through a course of treatment, and now she's asking for things after the fact.
Yeah.
There's something that was pre-existing.
So, Scott, this is truly a very classic example of what happens in an injury caused in a car crash. And you are on one end of it, which is that you're the one who has been accused, not criminally necessarily. I mean, you received maybe a ticket, I'm not sure. But
yes, I received a ticket for unsafe vehicle.
Unsafe vehicle. All right. So what we're talking about here, though, is the civil side of it. And the letter you received, I hope the insurance company put your mind at ease. Because really that letter, there's a strategic reason that this attorney wrote that letter. Poor writing aside. What it does is it's a way of kind of letting the insurance company know, hey, you according to our analysis of our client's injuries and her harms and losses, your insured, Scott, could be on the hook for what they would call an excess verdict. And an excess verdict means they're claiming that her injuries are more than $100,000, which is the policy limit. If the insurance company refuses to pay that policy limit and it goes to a jury trial, and at trial, a jury determines that these other damages that she's claiming are actually due somehow, and I know that you say they aren't, and maybe they're not, but if a jury determines after hearing the evidence from doctors and other witnesses that her injuries or damages are because of the crash, they may award her $500,000 for her injuries, according to this lawyer. They think that's the value of her claim. Right. In which case, the insurance company, they are on the hook for that first $100,000, but you would theoretically, I mean, it's not just theoretical, I mean, you are technically, Scott, on the hook for that remaining $400,000.
That's under the impression that your insurance covered whatever had to be paid out. How does...
just give me a second.
Yeah.
Everything that she asked for, she got.
Okay.
And like I said, she went through physical therapy and she was released by the physical therapist. She had an MRI done in January, and there was no change in the condition that she had on the day of the accident to the MRI.
So what you are doing right now, Scott, is you are putting yourself in the shoes, frankly, of the defense lawyer who will be making those arguments at a trial. All I'm trying to explain to you is that this letter is routine. But here's why it's strategically important for them to do that. Because if there is that excess verdict and you are then hit with a judgment and you have to pay that additional $400,000,
right,
you have a claim against your own insurance company for not having done what they asked you to do to begin with, or asked them to do to begin with, which is to pay the $500,000. So you actually have a claim then against your own insurance company.
What?
So it gets just very complicated. But that claim is for bad faith in the sense that your insurance company acted in bad faith by not fairly evaluating everything and paying her what she's owed. Now, look, you can get into the weeds on all of this. The bottom line is if everything that you say is true and doctors all kind of agree on that, you really don't have anything to worry about. And I think ultimately you probably don't have anything to worry about, because if you have that claim against your insurance company, this is oftentimes what happens.
Wow.
The woman who got hurt, her lawyer will say, look, Scott, you assigned that claim to us, and then we're not going to go after you for that $400,000 extra. You're going to be off the hook for all of that. Meanwhile, we'll go after your insurance company to make up the difference.
All right.
So that's why they've done it. It's nobody, I'll be honest with you, unless, Scott, I misheard you and you said your name is Bill Gates. They understand that you're probably not able to write a check for $100,000 or $500,000. This is just, it is designed in the law to make sure that people in your position are protected in case your insurance company doesn't do the job they're supposed to do to make sure that people who are hurt are covered, and that your insurance does what it was supposed to do, which is to insure you in case whether it was a mechanical failure, you weren't paying attention. We could get into the weeds on that, but let's just assume that you were just playing on your cell phone when this happened, and I know you weren't. Your insurance would cover you for that too. So this is one of those things where the law is designed to try to take care of people, and that includes you too, to make sure that it's fair and that the insurance companies can't get away with things that aren't fair. But it also is designed to make sure and give the insurance company latitude to do an evaluation and to say, hey, look, we don't think that her injuries that she's complaining of relate to this crash. They relate to something new that happened. And so, I'm not saying that what your insurance company is doing, what they are doing is wrong or is leaving you out to dry. I'm also not saying that what this woman's lawyer is doing is wrong or is somehow overbearing or designed to be threatening. It is just designed to put people on notice so that the legal process can continue and make sure it's done, it's buttoned up. That's what it looks like to me.
It's like legal chess.
Yes, it's exactly what it is.
Wow.
Yep.
And my advice to anybody who's listening, talk to the lawyer first, because the lady didn't file for lost wages. She didn't understand the process, and she got a lawyer a year after the fact.
Scott,
people need to be navigated through the process. I mean, she had gone through physical therapy, she had received treatment, she received everything else. If she had talked to a lawyer right away, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now because this situation would have been taken care of.
That's a good point right there.
Scott, you nailed it. And that's from the perspective of a person who is on the other end of this. And this is what I tell people. I said, sometimes if you call us a year after, it's oftentimes too late for us to do the things to protect your claim. And it also, people who don't have a lawyer in a crash like this, a situation like this, they end up, it complicates things because sometimes the lawyer actually helps smooth things so that things get done faster, they get done better, and it's less aggravating for everybody. And I had this situation in a domestic issue where there was somebody on the other side, who had a lawyer from out of town. This was my ex-wife when we got divorced. And this lawyer didn't know the local court rules, and it slowed everything down. And things could have been easier I know this from my ex-wife, if the lawyer had kind of known the local court process. It's funny. It's interesting how that works. Lawyers can truly make a difference in ways you don't even realize just by knowing how the system works to make it easier for their people, for their clients, but also for people on the other side.
Right. Yeah, you see, both sides of it on this one for sure. Scott, thanks for checking in, man. Thanks for the question. I think it helped out a lot of people. I think a lot of people learn stuff. And the one thing I've learned doing this with you for this long, there are no easy answers when it comes to the law. There's no A, B, C. It's all over the place. Even what you think is the most simple. Because I'm always, when I get these questions in advance and we send them off to David, but I always kind of come up with my own theory. I'm a pseudo lawyer.
Yes, right.
Without a degree. And I'm like, well, this is probably how it's going to go. And rarely does it go that way, even though it's the obvious direction the whole thing should have gone in the first place. It's sad. It makes me sad sometimes.
Well, you know what? I don't want you to, I know what you're saying. I don't want you to have that impression because so much of this is designed to make things easier for people to navigate. Because we all want to navigate life in a way that's as easy and as do no harm kind of way possible for other people. Yeah. And that's what the courts are designed to do, and it doesn't always work that way. That's what the law is designed to do, and I know it doesn't always work that way, but by and large, we have incredible systems in the United States, civilly, criminally, to try to just make sure that things are fair and just.
Yeah, right. Checks and balances.
And here's the
checks and balances. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's get ready. We got one more segment with the law frog, Dave McDivitt. If you had something for him, hit us up. I got one interesting text message we'll get into next about a guy who says what was it? Was it his brother was basically falsely arrested and something that sounds kind of greasy. So where does he go? We'll find out next.
You're listening to the Law Frog Radio Show with David McDivitt and Ross Ford on Kilo 94.3 FM. Presented by McDivitt Law Firm.
What do you think about this one here? Okay, for those who didn't hear the question, Citizen Mike checking in. His brother wrongfully arrested. The police also kidnapped his son at the same time, so I assume they took his child into custody when they arrested him, right? So while being detained, they broke his hand. They want to take this to federal court. Local judge already dismissed the case and gave his brother back the bail, the $250 it cost to get him out of jail for the wrongful arrest. And they want to know what the next step is. They want to sue the county for over $50 million. And then he goes on to say his last question would be if there's some kind of a blacklist that lawyers have out there because he's having trouble trying to find someone to help him out. He says, it seems like our case is so open and shut and simple, but no lawyer wants to help us. Why? Law Frog, why? Where's the smoke?
All right. So, Mike, here are a couple of things.
Would you want to take will you take this case?
No, I won't. And I'll explain why. And it has nothing to do with a blacklist of where lawyers get together and talk about, clients. People think about, in the NFL, nobody wants to hire Colin Kaepernick. They think that there might, there's a list that goes on. And I think people think that might exist or that exists in other industries. I'm not aware of anything like that in the law where lawyers, especially local lawyers, get together and say, hey, this guy's calling around. We won't take this case. Don't take this case. This strikes me right off the bat as a situation where you've got a potential client with some unreasonable expectations about what the value of their claim is. And I'm not saying they don't have a claim, but when you talk about $50 million that you want to get by suing a county for conduct of the sheriff's department, and because we can get into the semantics here, whether it's the county who would be responsible or the city if it was police or sheriff's deputies. But when you start throwing out a number like $50 million for somebody who had a broken wrist and where the child was kidnapped, I'm confused by things, and it feels like this is a situation where I might have not the ability to have a good relationship with my client because they may have just unreasonable expectations of what I, as a lawyer, could do for them. Yeah.
And to put this put this in perspective, there was a guy who just settled with the city. He was riding his bike down the street. Police were unleashing a K-9 unit on a suspect, and the K-9 pinged off of him and attacked him on his bike, knocked him over, and then his legs were run over by a car. All right. Now he settled for $175,000 just a day or so ago. So put it in perspective that way. Dude was bitten by a dog, knocked off his bike, run over by a car. That's a little more excessive than a broken hand, right?
Well, that is. So, but then you start talking about the word kidnap, and that's where red flags go off for me, or alarm bells, because That might be a very dramatic, hyperbolic way of saying they took a minor child into custody or under protective care.
Right.
Because they were arresting the only adult in that child's life, and there was no other person that they could ask to come and take care of the child. If it's an adult child of this guy who was arrested, and they took this person into custody, that is because they had reason to believe that this person was complicit in some kind of crime, or involved in some kind of other crime, and so they arrested this person as well. Those aren't kidnappings; those are presumably lawful arrests that we look back and say, okay, well, the evidence wasn't strong enough then to press charges. And so you get into a question then of whether there was some kind of unreasonable arrest, unreasonable search and seizure is really what this would fall under.
You know what? I think we got Mike here on the phone. You have questions for him?
Oh, good. Yeah.
Hey, Mike, is this you?
Yeah.
Okay. Questions. What do you want?
Hey, Mike.
What do you want filled in there, Law Frog?
Okay.
First of all, how old was the child, or the
7?
The son, or the
7 years old?
Okay. Okay.
And there was also the grandmother. Well, the thing is that my brother got his son, and they were going to go to church. So the cops came by, and they arrested my brother, but still my mom, the grandmother, took the son to church. So here's where it gets really crazy. This is it goes against the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, which is freedom of religion, because they went to the church to go pick up the son from church from the grandmother, my mom, who is actually watching the kid, watching him.
But she doesn't have custody, correct?
No, she does.
Ooh.
If there is a custody battle between my brother and the mom, and they're not married, so the judge has ruled that both parents get 100% custody, and my brother got another judge to write off, if anything happens to me, then the children are to go to my mom. So we have everything, everything is in a line, but these cops just didn't decide to actually just do what they were, they didn't look anything up.
Hey, Mike, where'd you come up with the $50 million price tag here?
Okay, so I was looking up other cases, and just a wrongful arrest, I did find a case where a guy was wrongfully arrested for shoplifting at a Walmart. So this guy got $10 million for just having a wrongful arrest. Now we're talking about a child kidnapping. These cops had no reason whatsoever to go and take the son from church. This is a violation of the son's violation of his constitutional rights of freedom of religion. You picked him up in the middle of a sermon. You're not letting him practice his religion for no reason whatsoever.
Interesting angle.
This is massive. I mean, we're not following any amendments here. The fourth one, I believe, is due process. They didn't follow any due process whatsoever. There was never a warrant for my brother's arrest. There was never any paperwork that was actually filed.
What was the actual arrest for in the first place? What do they think he did?
Okay, so this is where it gets a little confusing. We got the...
Oh, no. We're running out of time. You got to give us a quick version here.
Oh, God. Okay, so real quick. The original police report was a child kidnapping filed by the mother, but not even the mother. It was the babysitter. Now, to get fast forward, what they actually arrested my brother for was trespassing. But there was never any trespassing charges, never anything filed. But they pushed trespassing anyway.
So this
That's why the judge originally threw it out.
This kind of stems, I guess, from the confusion on who had custody of the kid, I think, right, Dave? It seems like.
You're right. Yeah, and so that's what I mean. Michael, did your brother go to the child's mother's house while mom was gone? Child was with the babysitter, and he picked up his son and then left with the son.
So here's the interesting thing that falls down. Yes, there is a kind of gray area that this falls under. So he did go to the resident. I have to be specific about this because they were at an apartment complex. He never entered their home.
So the only person that can actually file trespassing charges would be the landlord of the actual apartment complex. But he never did.
Well, how did he get his son?
He knocked on the door, and the son ran out.
And then,
So he never
he ran off.
So yeah, like you said, kind of technicality. He never walked past the threshold. He never trespassed. It's a lot of gray area, huh?
Well, it's a lot of gray area. And this is one of those...
I can see why this is difficult for a lawyer to want to jump behind.
It is, because I think we go back to your expectations of what the case may be worth, your analysis of the First Amendment here, and the child's... a First Amendment violation would be when the government is trying to interfere with somebody's ability to practice their religion. That's one way you could look at it, I guess. But in a situation like this, if what they have is they're pursuing a kidnapping and they're trying to get the child back, because that's originally what they were tasked with doing, that's not really a violation, I guess, of the First Amendment. If they go into a church, I mean, if a crime is committed in a church during a sermon, the police are allowed to go in and deal with that situation. I mean, it's like, in the Highlander. Have you ever seen the Highlander where the churches are... There could be only one! That's right. But if you go into a church, then nothing bad can happen. But sadly, bad stuff can happen. People can flee to a church, with stolen money, for example. And then if it's during the middle of a sermon, the police could go in to do that. We're getting really into some wonky stuff here to try to deal with this situation, which, by the way, is a very complicated situation. Yeah. And the reason you might not have a lot of lawyers chomping at the bit to represent your brother in this is because of some of the, obviously the custody issues with the child, where you're saying you have one judge who said that they each have equal custody, or as you said, 100% custody to both parents, which is kind of a tricky way to describe it. But then you said there's another judge who said that if your brother dies, then child gets to go to brother's parents, but not to mom, who also has equal custody of the child. And then we talk about these large numbers of what an expectation would be for what this case might be worth, if there is even a strong enough claim here for wrongful arrest, or for the conduct that the police did, in an expectation that you can win a claim for a violation of child's First Amendment right to freely practice their religion. It's very tricky, Michael, and I think that is one reason you're finding lawyers who are struggling with this. Right,
I just read it. It's exhausting. All right, Michael. Good luck there, buddy.
Yeah. Hey, thanks.
All right, thanks, man.
You bet.
Yeah, sorry we couldn't just give an easy answer. Again, as I mentioned earlier, no such thing as easy answers around here.
Thank you for listening to the Law Frog Radio Show with David McDivitt and Ross Ford on Kilo 94.3 FM, presented by McDivitt Law Firm.